Thank you, Lady Marion. I'm privileged to be here as a speaker on your anniversary. And Chris and Shay. I got this phone call today. I knew Shay 23 years ago, my first year in Alcoholics Anonymous. My sobriety date, August 21st, 1989. I don't tell you that to impress you, but it impresses me when I say it. And I love to say it. And that first year was rugged for both of us. But here she is. She just shows up sober after this many years to just say it works. When you gave out your chips, in my little purse here, I have, where did I put it? My white chip. Well, it's in here. There it is. This is the greatest, most treasured, the best gift I've ever been given. I treasure this more than anything in my life, this white chip, because I had surrendered to alcohol. And I never won a battle. The war was over. And coming to AA was not my idea. But I'll kind of start at the beginning because I want to tell you how it is today. I don't want to leave that part out. And I can describe it in one word: better. Every relationship, everything in my life is better without alcohol. I'm an alcoholic every day. I need help every day. And I like to seek a meeting every day. I don't go every day, but I know I need help. The words "God help me" got me here, and the word "God helps me" keep me here. And when I uttered those words, it was a God I didn't even believe in yet. I could tell you my story simply in 3 stages. I lived to drink, I drank to live, and I drank to die. I can tell my recovery in 3 stages. I came to a meeting, I came to, that would be the first one. I came to the meeting, and I came to believe. You can all go home now. That's it. That's really simple, isn't it? And I must tell you that I came from a very small town, Graham, which is 80 miles due north. And in 2008, a friend of mine saved a newspaper to show that Graham, North Carolina, had voted liquor by the drink in the town limits. 2008. There was an article also in the opinion page of the paper that said the devil was alive and well in Graham. This is a true story. So you think it was easy to drink back in the day? Well, I'll tell you how easy it was. Graham is the county seat of Alamance County. And on the court square, there was Whitey McAdams Fish Market. And you could go into Whitey's and get a fifth of fish anytime you wanted it. Or you could drive over Haw River to Miss Fleeter's. She was the bootlegger, and get whatever she had, and we'd always question exactly what it was. But she would walk around town in her fur coats and her jewels and her rings. I think she was the wealthiest woman in town. We actually, this was back in the 50s, had to go to Caswell County to even buy alcohol. So beer drinking, there were beer joints and pool rooms, but no respectable lady would go into any of those joints, right? Mm-hmm. Certainly not a self-respecting alcoholic. Oh, man. So I left school, went to school, had a family that there was no alcohol, no place for alcohol in my family, my mother being Southern Baptist fundamentalist. And I must tell you right off, and I'm going to skip around a lot, that my little brother, 57 years old, who lived in Houston until April a year ago, I had been praying and talking to him and for him to hit bottom and reach out for help. He died. He was found dead in his bathroom. He had retired from NASA, had a beautiful home, had everything. Like me, I had everything material, and I had nothing of any worth when I hit the bottom. And the only difference between him and me that keeps me sane because it's the greatest grief I think I ever felt. In recovery, my parents died. They were old. They're supposed to die. But my brother, only 57 years old, and there was nothing I could say or do to save him. And the grief was almost unbearable. Now, 23 years without a drink. When I got the news on the phone, I'm an alcoholic. I put the phone down when my sister called. She had found a bed for him in a treatment center. He would not go. It's all for those who want it. Clearly, I understand that today. But when I put the phone down, I walked through my kitchen. I said to my husband, I need a bottle of vodka, and I need it now. I am powerless over the thought of taking a drink. That was a thought. I went out to my deck. I screamed. I yelled. I grieved. The sounds coming from me were inhuman because I clearly understood the power of alcohol. Alcohol is a power greater than I am. I admitted that in the first step. Absolutely, yes. Never did I have any control. I was a social drinker maybe for an hour. Maybe not that long. But after that, nothing I said or did was going to be socially acceptable. But nevertheless, the wisdom is all here in these rooms. The wisdom in these rooms amazes me. When Wilder read how it works, and the preamble up here said that we are simply a fellowship of men and women who share our experience, strength, and hope, that we can help, solve our common problem and help others. I think that's why it works, because of your experiences. I love to come to speaker meetings. I seek them out. I don't think I've ever left a speaker meeting that I didn't walk out thinking, wow, there's hope for me, because I've heard some stories. How it is today, I have 5 grandchildren who've never seen Grammy Joyce drunk. They've never seen me take a drink. The oldest is 23. He owns me. He was born 6 months after my last drunk. You called it a binge, and that sounded really too nice for me. But, I was a drunk. You said I was an alcoholic. That sounded too nice, too. But I came to understand what's in my nature. I told my sponsor, it's in my nature to drink alcohol. She said, Joyce, it's in your nature to drink water. I said, you give me water and alcohol and see which one But I always, it was just all part of my life. In high school, I can remember my first drink of vodka, and I say this because my first drink of vodka, I was 17 years old, and I don't remember the last drink that night. My first drink of vodka, I was 49, and I don't remember the last drink that night. So what does that tell you? Anytime I picked up alcohol, it had complete control over me and took me where it wanted me to go. I was 17 years old. It was after the prom, and we went to the supper club in Greensboro. I'd never been to any. That was so big for this little small town girl to go to the supper club. And Jane Mansfield and Mickey Harkatay were the floor show. Somebody must remember that in here. And this date I had a brown bag. Some of you remember this, the brown bagging days. You could get setups in the supper club because it was privately owned, but you had to bring your own booze. And he put something in front of me that looked like orange juice. I think he called it a screwdriver. That was the best orange juice I ever drank in my life. Now that night I was supposed to go home. No, I was supposed to go to Sylvia's to a pajama party. I never made it. I went home with Linda. And it made me sick. I didn't want to do that anymore. I was never going to drink that much anymore, kind of thing. Yeah, right. So drinking just became a part of my MO. It just did. It was my constant companion, the elixir of life. Yeah, until it became the hemlock of hell. We know how that works. And so I, graduated high school, and I was reminded tonight about something that someone had put under my senior picture in the yearbook. I didn't choose this, but it said, why take life seriously? You'll never get out alive. Because I was happy, go lucky. Life was wonderful. I loved school, went off to college to become a teacher, kept a bottle of booze in my hat box in my dorm room all the time. That seemed perfectly normal to me. You could come to my room and get a drink. I think I took the National Teachers Exam in a brownout. I hardly remember showing up. I just remember the day of graduation in that huge stadium. Oh, God, I was suffering. I came to in the sorority house that morning in the bathtub, fully dressed. But I did make it to graduation, and it was 400 degrees. I was hurting. I needed a drink. See, I even crossed that I want a drink to I need a drink. I need a drink. The mental obsession is one thing, but the physical compulsion, that's a whole different thing. And I met my husband there. He was the football track coach, and I was the cheerleader, that kind of a relationship. And off I went to Greensboro after I graduated to teach English. It was very important for me at 22 years old to be self-supporting through my own contributions. I had a job, I had a car, 55 Ford, I had an apartment, and then I wanted to be sure I could put a roof over my head before I got married, because I didn't need anybody for any reason to do anything for me. And that's a joke. But however, we got married about 4 years after that. In fact, in April 21st, I'd been married 50 years to the same man. Now, he lived through it all, and God only knows why he's still with me, but he is. And I'll tell you, after 50 years, we have irreconcilable differences. And we're incompatible on many levels. But I'll tell you what's irreconcilable. He chooses not to drink. He told someone not long ago, well, I just choose not to drink because I don't like the way it makes me feel. That's unacceptable behavior. He can drink and he chooses not to. I don't get it. See, I came into AA. I came into Alcoholics Anonymous hoping that he could understand me. Nobody understood me. I don't understand him. I don't understand that. And that's perfectly all right because we have alcohol in our home, but nevertheless, he just chooses not to imbibe. And this would embarrass him if he knew I said this. My husband is the goodest person I have ever met. He's a good man, and he's a gentleman and a gentle man. And he grew up right down there on the corner of East Massachusetts Avenue. We moved back here in '87 when he retired. Good Lord, he hadn't worked in 26 years. Okay, that being said, we moved around a lot. We had 2 children. We have a daughter and a son. Our son lives in Pine Bluff. Our daughter's down at Topsail Island, so we get to see family quite often. And we moved around a lot and lived in Miami 10 years. I have to fast forward because he went to Vietnam and I went to Okinawa when the kids were 5 and 6. And my MO, he was gone 10 and a half weeks at the time. Out of a year, I saw him for 30 days. He would come home to Okinawa. And the kids, I always worked. I worked for 60 years. And the kids would come home and I would, be the mother and bathe them and put them to bed, turn on the reel-to-reel tapes and drink every night and go to work every day. Well, I wouldn't say every day. That might not be exactly true because I had stomach problems. I had diagnosable stomach problems. I'll tell you how that worked. When I could not keep my food down without a drink in the morning, it wouldn't stay there. I went to Chapel Hill to the hospital. They had tubes in every orifice. And I told them, there's something wrong with my stomach because I can't keep my food down unless I have a drink of alcohol. I told them that. There was nothing physically wrong with me, but they diagnosed a nervous stomach and gave me 3 Valium a day. No. They don't know. They know how to diagnose, and they know, well, no, they don't, not alcoholism. They know how to prescribe. Let me change that. And they will prescribe. When I was drinking alcohol, I was on antidepressants. Hey, I was depressed a lot. I was on anti-anxiety pills. All those that just about killed me, drinking with the 3 tranquilizers. I remember one night lying in bed and people were partying in my house and I could hear them and I couldn't move. I could not move my arms or my legs because I'd taken my 3 Valium that day and I had been drinking all evening. I knew I was dying, but here I am. So it was just all insanity, absolute insanity. And I couldn't understand for all those time, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? And then in Miami, we lived there, as I mentioned, 10 years. Here's what alcohol could do to me. And I don't have to explain what it did for me, because you know what it did for me. I went to the Grand Bay Hotel. This was the greatest night because I was among the top producers in this big company, little Graham girl, and I was going to get this award and everything. And I went from the Grand Bay Hotel in Miami, Florida, to a Dade County, Florida impound cell, drunk tank, having been arrested for drunk driving. The only time I came out of a blackout and did not know where I was driving my car. I lived in Miami. I was a realtor there. I knew Miami like the back of my hand, and I had no idea where I was going even today. But the arrest citation said I was going 25 miles per hour on a 60-mile-an-hour expressway. That will get their attention. And I could see that light. When I came to, there it was, slow motion. Thank God for that. Thank God, this guy saved my life. I could have gone off, I hate to think. So he took me to the impound cell, and he took a video of me trying to walk this line, and that didn't work very well. I was obviously drunk. And he threw me into this drunk tank. Now, if you can imagine this, it was like a Friday night. And I looked around, and these people, they took everything. They just take everything. But what you're wearing, forget everything's gone, your shoes, everything. And I looked around, and I thought, these people are hoodlums. I'm in here with a bunch of pimps and prostitutes. But it occurred to me later, they were business people. I was the only drunk in the drunk tank. And this girl walks over to me, this young girl, I was in a bad mood, walked over to me, and I was the best dressed person in the cell because I just come from the Grand Bay Hotel. And she walks up and says, "Oh, I really like that dress you're wearing. I think I'll take it." And I pointed my finger at her, I swear. And I said, "If you touch me, I will kill you." She didn't, so I didn't have to commit murder right there in the jailhouse. And she knew I would have fought to the death. I was so angry, and yet this was not my bottom, people. Not yet. But it was causing me all kinds of problems and trouble. When my husband came to pick me up, I think it must have been 4 a.m. From their home, the silence was deafening, absolutely deafening. So, it just did the way it was. But alcohol was the elixir of life, right? I was just miserably unhappy, a malcontent. That's what my husband would tell me. You're a malcontent. Nothing's ever enough. And when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, you said I'm restless, irritable, and discontented. I thought, well, that's it. He's right about that. I was angry and hostile most of my adult life. I lived in a hostile environment when I grew up. I grew up with anger and became angry. It's just the way it was. I've come to terms with that, but nevertheless, I had a lot of sharp edges back then, even when I came to AA. Well, when we moved here, I think back, my husband's never said this, but I think we came back to this area when he retired because his family, a lot of his family was still here. He has a 97-year-old aunt in a nursing home here. It's just all family for him. And I think he needed, some support for what was going on. I remember clearly during the last 2 years before I got to AA, coming to this church, remember the beautiful church they had here at Bronson, to a wedding. Now, I'd had drinks before we left, of course. I always did that. And I remember sitting in that church, I don't remember what anybody said in the wedding, but I remember clearly thinking, if I don't get out of here and get a drink, I am going to explode. I wanted to rip the flesh from my bones. And I looked around the church at here's Joyce just dripping off the walls because I need a drink. Another couple was with us, so after the wedding, the resort club at Pinehurst was hosting the reception. And my husband and the other couple went into the hors d'oeuvre table, and I went to the bar to get, I said, I want a double vodka, rocks. I like to call, don't bruise it too much. 1 cube would be enough. Mm-hmm. And I had to have a couple of doubles to feel the way they were feeling, I suppose, without the alcohol. So the physical compulsion had taken over and had taken me, and there was nothing I could do to stop. The drinking was a living hell, and the not drinking was worse. So what I did, I made a decision. I'm leaving. I'm going to Key West. I'm going down there like Papa Hemingway. I'm going to write my novel. And I'm just going to sit and drink Cuba Libres and tequila sunrises and, be somebody's aging overnight friend, whatever. I didn't care. The hell with you and the horse you rode in on. That was my attitude. I put all I could get into the trunk of my car. Now, my husband and I at this time, he was living upstairs, I was living downstairs. See, I didn't understand when I got here when they said, don't have a relationship for a year. I hadn't had a relationship for 2 years, and I was married. So I thought, what does that mean? I mean, we just lived in the same house. I drove out of my driveway. I live off New York Avenue, and drove 4 miles down US 1 and checked into a motel behind Howard Johnson's. That's as far as I got, me and my vodka. I remember checking in. I don't know how long I was there. I don't know how many bottles I had, but they were empty. And I want to describe this to you because I never want to forget it. That's when when I went to the doctors, I was, trying to drink to live, trying to get my food down. I was now drinking to die. I wanted to die. And I could kill myself with alcohol. I understood alcohol poisoning. And if I had not regurgitated, I probably would be dead. But when I came to, I was lying in my regurgitation. My hair was stuck to the pillow, and I was lying in my body wastes. The most disgusting, the most demoralizing, that pitiful demoralization, that bottom that we had. And I knew my life was over. The way I was living my life was over. And I remember getting up and showering and throwing my clothes away. I wore a towel home from driving the car. Well, I didn't have any clothes. And of course, everybody was looking for me. And I went into my bedroom and I locked the door. I wouldn't talk to anybody. And I laid down in my bed, and I remember the blinds were open, and I said these words, God help me, as earnestly as I've ever said anything in my life. God, twice, God help me. I had the idea that I would get up and get dressed and walk out my front door down to the Dartmouth Clinic, which was a mental health clinic. I'd never been there, but I knew psychiatrists were there, and I was going to commit myself to a mental institution because I understood the insanity of my life. I had to be insane. I walked into the church next door. I knew John Stone was the minister because he was Gary's family minister. And I said, is John Stone here? And they said, yes. And when I saw John, he invited me into this little room, and he talked, and I wept. And he talked, and I wailed. I have no idea what I said, but I do know that he says, I want to pray with you. They do that, ministers. And he got down on his knees and put my hand in his, and I cursed his God and his church and told him to get up, that I was not worth praying for and wanted nothing to do with his God. And then he said something that I didn't understand. He said, Joyce, I swear this is true, I think you should go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And there's a meeting tonight in my church at 8 o'clock. And my thought was, why is he telling me this? Well, see, I look back on that. I was reeking of alcohol. Hell, I'd been on a binge for a week anyway. I mean, it had to be coming out of my pores. Well, I didn't say that I was going to any AA meeting, but I had to go to my office and dig my way out, and I walked into my office down on the corner of Pennsylvania, and the phone rang, and this voice says, my name is Susan. I'm an alcoholic. I will be there tonight at the meeting to welcome you. Perhaps you're one of us. Baptist minister turned me into AA. I finally got that message. I went home. I had no idea I was going to any AA meeting. Did not say any word to my husband. Did not say one word to him about anything. And I walked out my front door. I live across the street from the Baptist church, into that meeting. It was very small, maybe 10 people there. And there was somebody I recognized, Carl S. And the minute, we used to get drunk together many years ago, and he was the musician and everything. I love this guy. And he walks over to me, and he says, well, Joyce, and gave me a hug. He said, I knew there was something about you I liked. And I said, leave me alone. I'm sick. I don't even want to be here. I don't remember what I said. But these people gave me a big book, 3rd edition, and they wrote their names in it and their phone numbers. I didn't pick up any chip. I didn't even know anything about AA, except when the meeting was over, Jim B. stood out on the sidewalk and handed me the key to the church and said, I want you to come back Monday night and make the coffee, and I'll be here to show you how to do it. They're trusting me with the key to the church. They don't know me. Don't know me. And so I went back Monday. In fact, that was Monday. On Tuesday, this lady, Susan, who had called me to come and pick her up to take her to a meeting. And she lived in Pinehurst. And I got driving over there. She wouldn't take me to another meeting. I drove up. She had 2 cars. I thought, why am I taking her to this meeting? Belligerent. And she took me to Aberdeen. The Keeping It Sober group in Aberdeen is my home group. That's where I picked up my white chip. When I walked in there and saw that wall, that serenity prayer, God grant me serenity. I had no idea what that meant. And I started crying. I cried for a year because I had no serenity. And if it hadn't been for those old guys and all the women, dear Mariah, I will never forget her. She must have been 120. And talking about that 3rd step prayer, and I didn't understand anything. And they told me, just sit down. You don't know anything. You don't have anything to say. We're here to share our recovery story. We all know how to get drunk, And I would sit in the parking lot after the meeting and cry because I didn't want to go home. Because my life, there had to be a lot of pain before I got sober. So there had to be a lot of emotional turmoil before I got any serenity in my life. So there I was on a dry drunk for a long time. I understood the second step clearly, that there must be this power that's going to restore me to sanity. See, I understood the word insanity. Mm-hmm. So if there's the power greater than I am in the first step, that power in the second step has got to be God. It's got to be. I'll call it God. Whatever it is, it's God. If you had told me to pray to Ralph, I would have. It didn't matter what it was. I knew whatever it was. The people in that room had something I didn't have. And they were talking about their drinking and drinking coffee and slapping each other on the back, and I was bleeding internally from every pore. But they listened. And no matter what I ever said, well, keep coming back. It gets better. Well, it does. But it took me a long time to realize that I'm it. Perhaps nothing in my life gets better. I mean, life is what it is. But I am better capable today of meeting calamity with some kind of serenity. Not always. I have to be vigilant every day, because in taking those steps, I had a chance to really open up to my sponsor, Betty B., and pour out everything, all the garbage and the dung pile of my life. I just dumped it on her one day. And when I took that fifth step, I was 4 years sober before I had the courage to do that, because I thought, my God, she will not be able to handle this. And I just dumped it all out. And when I got through, and she said, went to make some coffee, she said, you want God to remove all this? I said, yes. She said, then get on your knees and ask him to do it. See, I didn't know. I was just taking the 5th, 6th, and 7th steps. And she gave me the 7th step prayer. Changed my life, taking those steps. And I was entirely ready to make a list of people I'd harmed, because I wanted to make amends. I think that's the difference between what we have and what religion has. Because at no time did I have to ask forgiveness, but I got to make amends to people I've hurt and the people I've harmed. And it has to be direct, face to face. And so I'm still, working on that one and taking inventory of myself. And I can break out in a rash of self-will in a nanosecond. But it begins to pinch, and when it does, I'm reminded that it's my will. It's very, very hard. Life is difficult. Life hurts. And it's more difficult for some than others. Freedom from bondage. My story's in the big book. I didn't write it. It's the story, Freedom from Bondage, the first page. When I read that, I couldn't believe it. Because in that, it says that what happened to me in my life. See, I was one of those who suffered grave emotional disorders before I got, from childhood. But see, doctors would tell you, well, what happened to you in childhood was not your fault. And it wasn't. However, Alcoholics Anonymous said, the problem I have today is how I reacted to what happened to me in my childhood. Not what happened. I can never take that away. But, and my sponsor, she told me this, and it helped me so much. She said, Joyce, accept this. When God created your parents, and they were wonderful providers, he turned their butts over and stamped defective on their butts. And you've just been expecting first quality all these years. Give them a break. And just accept them exactly the way they are. My daddy died over here in the Peanut Village nursing home. 10 months, he lost his mind. Severe dementia. One day I walked in and the nurse says, he's been looking for you. That's the kindest thing my daddy ever said. Because he threw me out of his house when I came home from college one weekend and told me never to come back because there wouldn't be any problems unless I showed up. And he was right. I could bring the discord. The St. Francis prayer, I love that prayer. I love it because that prayer tells me what I'm supposed to bring to the world. When there's doubt, faith. Hope for me, H-O-P-E, is hearing other people's experiences. Hope means the feeling I have. Wait a minute. Hope is the feeling I get that the feeling I have isn't permanent. See, I learned these things in AA, and I try to commit them to memory because my brain is a computer. Garbage in, garbage out, right? And if I store this stuff in here, when I need it, thank God it's there. Especially, I'll tell you, I've not heard the voice of God except through you. You're the messengers. But I heard the voice of my alcoholism when I was 1 year sober. I was at a prenup wedding reception, this beautiful beach club, and the music was great, and we were dancing, having a great time. And I heard a voice. And it said, Joyce, if you want to have a better time, go over to the bar and order a double vodka. I heard the voice. It wasn't my voice. I turned around. There was nobody there. I swear. I immediately, here's just what Alcoholics Anonymous does for me. I immediately went over to my husband and I said, I need to leave and I have to go now. I said, my alcoholism has me by the throat. When he got to the car, I was standing by the door. He said, you've never been the first person to leave a party. I said, I need to leave. So from that day on, whenever we go anywhere socially, I drive separately because I might need to leave. So I know exactly what's wrong with me. It's on page 64 of the big book. Exactly. I have a spiritual malady. It is a spiritual state of dis-ease. And thank God and you and my life, I don't even have the words. There is no place for alcohol in my life today. And I just have to say, keep coming back. It gets better. Thank you.